The hunters of stone and spirita cold mist hung over the jagged cliffs as dawn crept across the sky. In a remote valley untouched by time, early humans stirred from their caves, unaware that something beyond the stars was already watching them. They lived in simple huts of hide and bone, hunted with sharpened stone, and prayed to the fire as if it were a living god. Among them was a boy named Oryx, barely 17 winters old, yet chosen by the elders for a task of ancient importance. Oryx, breath turned to mist as he climbed the frostbitten slopes of the eastern ridge. His legs ached from days of walking, and his hands were raw from gripping his flint-tipped spear. The wind carried the howl of wolves from the woods behind him, but he did not look back. He had been sent on a rite of passage to survive alone, to hunt, and to prove his spirit strong. No one had told him about the lights in the sky. On the sixth night, as Oryx sat beside a dwindling fire and chewed dried roots, the stars above shifted. A silent shadow passed across the moon. He didn't flinch. He had learned long ago not to fear the sky, but when a thunderous streak of light cut through the air and vanished into the mountains beyond, he stood up. His instincts whispered that this was no falling star. Something had come. In the great forest west of the human camps, trees toppled. A deep hum filled the air as a metallic beast landed on trembling soil. From its shining hull emerged creatures, wrapped in armor like shells, with long limbs and glowing eyes. The Shalak had arrived, a warrior race from the distant rings of Uthra Prime. Their mission was simple: study the native species of this underdeveloped world and assess its potential threat. Earth was classified as primitive, non-hostile, harvestable. Commander Drake had stepped out of the ship with a scarf. Stone tools, fire pits, unrecorded dialects. A dying planet of animals, he muttered. Easy recon. To rotations, and we're out. His officers agreed. They deployed sensors, camouflaged their craft, and set up an observation post in the cliffs above Oryx Valley. Their mistake was assuming no one would see. 3 nights later, Oryx followed the scent of smoke and found more than fire. What he saw in the forest clearing didn't make sense. The trees were burned, but no ash lingered. The grass was flattened in a perfect circle, but no storm had passed, and there, lodged into the bark of a giant oak, was something not made by stone or bone, a shard of smooth black metal, humming with invisible energy. He touched it, and it pulsed. Far above, a Shalak sensor flared red. Commander Drakath dismissed it. The native touched a fragment. It will be forgotten. They lacked the cognition to understand, but Oryx did not forget. He wrapped the metal shard in a hide and took it home. He didn't tell the elders. He studied it in silence, night after night. Sometimes it would glow softly when he thought, to hard, or pressed it against the flame. It changed his dreams. He began to draw strange shapes in the dirt, designs that no human had ever seen. But that felt real, possible, alive. Within weeks, other hunters saw what Oryx had found. Some feared it. Others believed it was a gift from the gods. One elder, Myra, blind in one eye but wise in stories, whispered, "This is not of Earth. But it came to you, not them. That means something." She told the boy to protect it and to learn from it. Meanwhile, the Shalak began capturing wild beasts, wolves, boars, even a saber-tooth caught in a stasis field. They were testing the ecosystem, mapping threats, still underestimating the minds of the humans. One night, a group of Shalak soldiers, invisible under cloaks of bending light, wandered too close to the edge of the human camp. They saw the fire, dances, the hunting rituals, the chants to gods who never answered. One soldier laughed. "They sing to stars and spirits. They are barely aware of themselves." But that soldier didn't notice that Oryx's eyes were fixed on the sky, and that the black shard he carried pulsed stronger every time he looked at it. By the time winter began to fade, strange new weapons appeared in the camp, spears tipped with melted stone, nets that sparked when thrown, traps made from instinct and borrowed understanding. The elders didn't question the source. They simply saw that Auric was leading the young with tools no one had ever built. Still, the Shalak believed this world belonged to them, until one of them disappeared. A patrol unit of 2 was sent into the lower woods to track a migrating herd. They never returned. The Shalak searched 4 days. All they found was a spear buried through armored plating and scorched ground around a crude, but effective fire trap. "This is impossible," Dracath growled. "Primitive life cannot comprehend energy manipulation, but Earth, even in its Stone Age, had something Uthra Prime had long since lost: raw instinct, untamed curiosity, and the refusal to die." Quietly dotting the cliffs above the forest, Auric carved into stone a symbol from his dream. It wasn't a word or a warning. It was something older. A challenge, and the war of stone and stars had only just begun. The echo of fire and steelth moon rose high above the valley, casting pale silver over frozen treetops and jagged stone. In the stillness of that night, Auric stood atop a high ridge, looking down at the place where the forest no longer grew. The clearing that once teemed with life now glowed with a faint unnatural light. The sky was silent, but the earth spoke in strange ways. Birds avoided that place. Wolves no longer hunted near it. Even the trees seemed to lean away. Auric knew something had come. Something powerful, something dangerous. And he had touched it. The shard still pulsed softly in the pouch at his side. It warmed when he grew angry. It vibrated when he was near. The clearing. It responded to something inside him, something he didn't yet understand. But he was learning. He wasn't alone anymore. For other young hunters, Tennessee, Rua, Boar, and a quiet girl, Ilka, had joined him, but seeing what he built. His new traps didn't just catch prey, they stunned, burned, or killed instantly. He said little about how they worked. They didn't ask. They saw what he saw. The world was changing, and the old ways would not protect them anymore. From the shadows above, the Shalak watched these changes. At first, they dismissed them as coincidence, evolution, perhaps. A single clever native, mimicking the energy of the shard. But as time passed, reports grew more troubling. Another patrol lost. Equipment tampered with, animal migration disrupted. Energy spikes around the humans' fire pits. Unnatural interference. The Shalak were used to dealing with fire throwers and metal slingers from across the stars, but not primitive beings crafting rudimentary weapons that interfered with high-tech systems. Dracath stood before his officers in a shimmering war chamber inside the cloaked vessel. He pointed at the glowing projection of Auric's camp. "This is no longer a passive observation. This is adaptation, interference. We must respond." One officer, Jorik Kar, disagreed. "They are still animals, dangerous, yes, but localized. A single tribe." Dracath's voice darkened. "So was the plague on Armith IV. So were the insects of New Volus. We underestimated them too." He sent a new unit, 4 elite scouts, cloaked in light-bending armor, armed with plasma hooks and neural darts. Their mission was not to kill but to capture the human who wielded the shard. "We must know what it knows," Dracath said, "and how it knows it." That same night, Auric dreamed of flames falling from the sky. In the dream, his people screamed, stone huts crumbled, and trees burned under a sun that was not the sun. He woke before dawn, heart racing. The shard was glowing fiercely now. It pulsed like a heartbeat. He knew they were coming. The forest warned him in subtle ways. Birds flew wrong. Foxes howled when they shouldn't. A pattern in the dust told of many feet moving with no scent, no sound. It was not magic. It was instinct, the same raw survival sense that had shaped his kind since before they walked upright. His ancestors had hunted mammoths and dodged falling glaciers. Now they hunted things far stranger. Auric called his small band together. Ilka, the sharp-eyed tracker, laid her ear to the ground. "Something walks here," she whispered. "But I see no track," Boar grunted, gripping his heavy club. "Spirits again." "No," Auric said quietly. "Not spirits, not gods. Beasts of sky and steel. They prepared. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a game of wits, nerves, and silence. The Shalak scouts, invisible to each other in their cloaks, advanced toward the human camp under moonlight. Their heat sensors flickered, oddly disrupted by small burning pits scattered outside the village. Their auditory sensors glitched, blinded by the rhythmic chants of a dozen women pounding hides in ritual. And then, the first scout screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, just a grunt, really, but it shattered the night. His foot had sunk into a camouflaged pit laced with sharpened obsidian and bones, not deep enough to kill, just enough to trap and bleed. The others moved faster, but the humans had split. Oric's small band didn't fight in the open. They moved through the trees like ghosts. Bruce's sling cracked a scout's helmet from above. Tennessee used smoke bombs made from mushrooms and pitched to blind thermal optics. Ilka, quiet as ever, climbed a tree and dropped onto one of the scouts with nothing but a sharpened antler. Her strike was precise through the neck joint. She didn't even scream. When the scout fell, Oric was already waiting with a spear of charged metal. For the first time in Shalak history, a technologically superior unit was routed by Stone Age warriors. Dracaf was silent as the report came in. 3 dead, 1 missing, no trace of the shard. No damage to the native camp. They were not fighting random creatures anymore. They were facing coordinated resistance. And worse, the humans had learned. Oric examined the fallen scout's armor in silence. He didn't understand all of it, but he understood pieces. The way the helmet glowed when it neared the shard, the weight of the strange metal boots, the way the cloak shimmered when he pressed the hidden panel. He wore it only once long enough to see the world change through its visor. He gave it to Ilka, saying, "You see more than me. You wear the sky." Back in the village, the elders demanded answers. They feared what the boy had brought. Some spoke of curses, others whispered of angry gods. Myra, the oldest among them, stood beside Oric. "We can no longer ignore the sky," she said. "It watches us, but it bleeds like we bleed. It dies like we die." The tribe was split. Some wanted to destroy the shard and return to the old ways. Others believed it was their only hope. In secret, Oric and his group began crafting new things using what they learned from the fallen Shalak: a metal sling, a fire stone that could spark even in the rain, a flute that gave off high sounds that made deer run in circles. This was not the end of the invasion, but it was only the warning. High above Earth, the second Shalak vessel had already entered orbit. It was larger, armed, filled with soldiers who had never known defeat. They came expecting to crush a species of animals, but humans were not animals. They were survivors. And this time, they had begun to remember what they were truly capable of. The bones of the scythe smoke took weeks to clear. The fire had eaten through the eastern woods, leaving behind a charred wasteland of blackened trees and twisted metal. Yet, within that destruction, something else remained, proof that gods did bleed. Oric and his warriors returned from the firestorm, carrying pieces of the purifier, burned fragments of alien alloy, half-melted weapon parts, and the core now a scorched stone-like orb, still warm to the touch. The clan gathered around them in silence, as if witnessing a legend being born. No elder had ever seen a beast like the one they defeated. No hunter had ever touched tools that shimmered with such strange energy. What once were whispers about Oric now became declarations. Some called him the one marked by stars. Others whispered that perhaps the gods did not send him visions, but warnings. In a large clearing, Oric and the other warriors laid out their trophies before the clan. He raised the cracked, humming orb overhead for all to see. "This is what hunts us," he said. "But it bleeds like any beast, and if it bleeds, it can die." The crowd roared with voices sharpened by fear and hope. From the shadows, Myra the elder stepped forward. Her walking stick tapped slowly against stone. She approached Oric. Her one good eye studied the object in his hands. She did not touch. It. She merely nodded. You hold the bone of the sky, she whispered. You were not chosen by the gods. You are their test. Later that night, as flames danced in the village's main pit, Oryx studied the pieces taken from the wreck. Some of the materials were soft but turned hard under fire. Others pulsed like veins filled with light. One shattered in his hands and released a scent so sharp it made his nose bleed. Still, he kept working. He tried binding the energy core into a sling. At first, it cracked the leather, but when he wrapped it in bark soaked in mineral water, the energy calmed. His next stone flew through 3 trees dot by moonlight. Oryx carved a new spear not from bone or wood, but from salvaged alien struts. He heated the tip with fire and struck it with stone until it glowed red. Then he dipped it into river clay and cooled it fast. The metal turned black and dense. He etched lines into it with the shard. When he tested it against a rock, it split it clean in half. He called it Sky Fang, but Oryx wasn't the only one changing dot all across the valley. Humans began to shift. Curiosity was no longer a silent trait, it burned in their eyes. Children poked at strange materials. Elders, once strict and bound to the old ways, sat silently watching young ones build with materials no one understood. Spears became sharper. Nets became smarter. Fire pits turned into forges. Even language evolved. They created words for things they had no name for before. Sky-beasts. Lightblood. Star-shields. Meanwhile, high above in orbit, the Shallock cruiser brimmed with unease. Draker stood in silence, hands behind his back, watching Earth through the viewing port. Commander, his intelligence officer, said cautiously, 3 recon teams lost. 1 purifier destroyed. 5 scouts disabled. All without returning signal. Dracath clenched his mandibles. By primitives, they are no longer primitive, the officer said, voice low. Something has changed. Their minds are expanding. Their weapons are adapting. How? Dracath snarled. We believe. They are learning from the debris, reverse engineering by instinct. Possibly guided by contact with fragmentary Shallock tech. That's impossible, Commander. They forged metal-tipped weapons from alloy. They disrupted cloaking. They mimicked our traps. Dracath's silence was louder than any alarm. He turned slowly. Prepare a clean sweep. Orbital incineration of the region. We will erase the infection before it spreads. The order echoed through the ship like a death knell. On Earth, Oryx did not sleep that night. Something pulled him from his tent and toward the cliffside. The stars above twinkled, peacefully, but his shard burned in his palm. It was screaming in silence. He closed his eyes and listened. In his mind, he saw light raining from the heavens. Fire not from the woods but from the sky. Mountains breaking, rivers boiling. His people running, burning, dying. He gasped and dropped the shard. This was not just a tool. It was a warning. He ran through the village, shouting, waking everyone. We must move. He cried. The sky will fall again. Panic spread. The elders tried to calm them, but Myra stepped forward. The boy speaks truth. His visions have never lied. But where will we go? To the great caves, Oryx answered. Beneath the Wolf Mountain, the journey was harsh. Dozens of clanspeople packed supplies, carried children, dragged hides and stone. For 2 days they traveled, climbing, crawling, breathing thin mountain air, all while the sky remained still. Then, on the 3rd night, it changed. Far above, the Shallock ship darkened as its orbital incinerator aligned with Earth. The clouds parted. A beam of white light surged down through the stratosphere fast, silent, absolute. It struck the valley. In a breath, the old village vanished. Trees became ash, stone turned to glass, the river dried up, hissing. Birds screamed and fell from the sky. The Shallock did not cheer. It was not victory, it was extermination. But they did not know that no humans had died. From the shadows of the Wolf Mountain caves, Oryx and his people watched a distant fire with hard, glowing eyes. One child whispered, "Is it gone?" Oryx shook his head. "No. Now we know what they are. And now, They've told us how they fight. He turned back into the cave, where a growing pile of alien debris was laid out in neat rose metal. Glowing wires, shattered tech, all scavenged over weeks. We're not running anymore, he said. We're building. And deep in the caves, where once only echoes lived, a forge sparked to life. The forge beneath the mountain breathed with fire. Inside its ancient belly, where echoes once whispered, and the air was cold and still, now the walls rang with the rhythm of hammers. Sparks danced in the dark as stone anvils clanged. Beneath human hands, the forge was alive. And it was unlike anything the Stone Age had ever known. Oryx stood at the center, stripped to the waist, arms blackened with soot and sweat. In front of him burned a fire hotter than any natural flamer, forge powered not by simple wood, but by a converted alien plasma cell rigged with raw stone and human ingenuity. The fusion wasn't elegant, it wasn't efficient, but it worked, and that was enough. Around him, other hunters turned artisans worked tirelessly. Women and men melted down the metal scavenged from the purifier's wreckage and shaped it into spearheads and armor plates. Children ground stone powders into flammable dust. Even the elders helped, offering knowledge of patterns, wind directions, and the behaviors of animals to design smarter traps. What had once been a scattered people bound by nature were now united by something new, a shared purpose. The fire had burned their home to the ground. Now, they would rise from it. The cave expanded deeper than any had imagined. Guided by Oryx's visions, they found chambers filled with glowing crystal veins. The shard pulsed stronger when near them. He believed the crystals responded to energy. He pressed one against the drone core. It hummed to life, glowing with faint blue light. That night, the shard showed him a dream of interconnected light, of language made from pulses, of war songs sung through machines. Oryx began to carve symbols into the crystal using the shard. He couldn't explain how he knew what to carve, only that the designs felt correct. Symbols became circuits. Light danced between stone and crystal. He built something that hummed, spun, and flashed, a device that measured light, tracked sound, and reacted to his thoughts. He called it the Eye. With it, he could sense movement in the sky. He could feel the pull of energy like a second heartbeat. The others treated it like magic, but Oryx knew better. It was knowledge hidden in stars, waiting to be unearthed by curious hands. Meanwhile, the Shalak believed their mission was complete. Commander Dracath sat in silence on the command deck, arms folded. His eyes scanned the report, listing Earth's population clusters as extinct or primitive. No energy spikes, no unusual signals. Our work here is done, he said, his voice void of satisfaction. Mark the system, non-threatening, resume course. To the next, but deep in orbit, unnoticed, one of the observation drones still functioned, its cloaking damaged during the orbital firestorm. It hovered awkwardly above Earth's southern hemisphere, recording faint electromagnetic anomalies, patterns that pulse like language. Not Shalak language, not machine language, something else. Back, beneath Wolf Mountain, Oryx had grown stronger. Not just in body, but in mind. His thoughts moved faster. His understanding of the alien tech deepened. The shard was changing him, or awakening something already within him, and the same began happening to others. His closest companion, Lenu, a fierce huntress, who once taught him to track elk through snow, had begun creating armor that flexed like hide, but shimmered like metal. She embedded crystal shards into the shoulder plates, which absorbed heat and light, making the wearer near invisible at a distance. Another boy, Tor, crafted throwing discs that spun with centrifugal force enhanced by magnetic shards. They curved through the air like birds and struck targets twice their size. It was not science as the Shalak knew it. It was survival elevated by raw, chaotic brilliance. Oryx stood before the fire again, this time not to shape a weapon but to speak. We have changed, he told the people gathered around. We still bleed, but we do not break. Our hands still carry stone, but now they hold light. We still fear the sky, But now, it fears us. The mountain roared with approval. Plans were laid. Patrols began scouting new areas, tribes from beyond. The valley began to arrive, drawn by stories of the mountain that breathed fire and men who held stars in their hands. Some were skeptical. But when they saw the weapons, the glowing armor, the flying discs, they knelt. Auric did not ask for loyalty. He earned it. From one clan, a woman brought a piece of strange sky metal. She had found it embedded in the mountain face a year ago. Auric studied it, recognizing the symbol etched into its side. It was not shellac, it was older, precursor tech buried, 4,000 of years. He realized then that Earth may not have been visited for the first time. They had come before. Maybe Earth wasn't just a resource. Maybe it was something more, a test ground, a memory, a seed. He took this new fragment to the eye. When connected, it flashed rapidly. Then a projection emerged, shapes, star maps, and data streams so fast they burned his vision. But he saw something unmistakable, a shape like Earth, and another, larger shape orbiting above it. A ship, a new ship. His heart dropped. The shellac hadn't left, they were circling back. A second wave, not to study, not to scan, to conquer. Lenya stood beside him. We don't have time. Auric looked over the forge, over the warriors, the armor, the weapons, the devices. We do now. That night, they prepared for war not as prey, but as defenders of a world underestimated, a world that refused to stay broken. They were not just hunters anymore, not even survivors. They were something new. When fire learned to think, sky rippled. Above Earth, the second shellac ship arrived through folded space. Unlike the first vessel, this one did not come quietly. It split the stars like a crack in a stone wall, sending shockwaves into the upper atmosphere. Its hull gleamed with reflective plating, covered in living circuitry that adapted to enemy tactics. It was not a scout. It was a cleansing vessel. Its mission was not to observe or test, it was to finish what the first ship had failed to do. Inside, High Commander Varex stood motionless before the central control sphere, surrounded by a council of warrior engineers. Unlike Dracath, Varex held no illusions about humanity's weakness. The destruction of the Purifier, the anomalies recorded by the last drone, and the disappearance of elite shellac soldiers spoke of a threat far greater than primitive. These humans, Varex growled, are no longer evolving. They are accelerating. He gestured to the holographic map of Earth's northern hemisphere. Red clusters glowed where energy spikes had been detected. Right in the center of Wolf Mountain, deploy the skirmishers. We will rip the mountain open and scatter their ashes. The order was given. 10 atmospheric dropships, shaped like jagged birds of prey, tore through Earth's clouds. Each carried elite shellac warriors cloaked, armed, and engineered for rapid extermination. Their weapons didn't fire simple energy, they folded matter, shattered gravity, and made things at the core. But Earth was ready. Inside the mountain, the forge burned brighter than ever. The core chamber had evolved into a sanctuary of invention. Smoke mixed with light. Flame licked the walls as warriors fitted armor, adjusted targeting crystals, and prepared for what they all knew was coming. Auric stood among them, his skin smeared with ash and mineral dust, a new gauntlet wrapped around his forearm. Embedded in its center was the shard, fused now with one of the cave crystals and the core from the fallen Purifier. When he activated it, the gauntlet whispered to him flashes of motion, glimpses of energy paths, and instincts that weren't entirely human anymore. He had stopped asking how it worked. He focused only on what it could do. Lenya, armored in light reflecting plates, approached him with grim determination. They're here. Auric turned toward the cave mouth where scouts had returned, breathless and wide-eyed. 10 sky beasts. One of them gasped, descending fast. They shine like death. Auric's hand tightened around Skyfang. Then we welcome them. The warriors of the mountain didn't march like trained soldiers. They moved like flowing earth spreading, through trees, caves, and valleys with traps, weapons, and raw resolve. Their armor wasn't sleek, but it worked. Their weapons weren't elegant, but they killed as the Shalak dropships descended. Guided by gravity-splitting thrusters, the humans struck first, from cliff ledges. Glowing discs spun through the air, like slicing spirits. One embedded itself into a dropship's engine coil. The energy built fast, then exploded, taking half the ship with it. The wreckage plummeted into a ravine, its metal burning all the way down. Another ship released its troops into the valley. They leapt like shadows, weapons humming with dark energy. One of them sliced through a boulder with ease, mistaking it for a human hideout. But they didn't notice the spark trap wired behind it. It detonated with a shriek of magnetized fire, liquefying the air. The Shalak were torn apart. A third tried to flee, only to be lassoed mid-air by a net made of mineral twine and molten hooks. From the trees above, Oryx dropped like a hawk. He landed hard, driving Skyfang straight into the soldier's chest plate. It sparked, shrieked, resisted, then cracked. Oryx rolled away as the alien collapsed, leaking something that shimmered like starlight. Another warrior appeared behind him, faster than the first. Its weapon flared, aimed at Oryx's back, but before it fired, a blinding arc of lightning shot. From a ridge above, Tor stood there, holding a magnetic launcher shaped from melted purifier coils and clay. He didn't smile. He simply reloaded. The battle raged 4 hours. Metal clanged against stone. Energy shrieked against bone. And through it all, the humans adapted. They learned from every move. They used the land, the wind, the very heat of the earth beneath their feet. What they lacked in experience, they made up for in unpredictability. Varex watched from orbit, silent at first, then furious. "This isn't a war," he snarled. "This is a betrayal of biology." He ordered the release of the Pulse Titan, a massive ground unit capable of turning entire valleys into glass. It descended slowly, legs of molten metal stomping through the forest, every step erasing nature itself. Oryx saw it coming. He knew they couldn't beat it by force, so he beat it by thought. He took the eye, now embedded into a metal helm built from 3 different Shalak wrecks, and stared at the Titan. He could feel its pulse, like a heartbeat wrapped in armor. He closed his eyes. Then he moved. He ran toward it, not to fight, but to climb. Fire licked his legs. Ash stung his eyes, but he kept going. Others joined him. Lenya distracted the Titan by hurling light grenades. Tor fired magnetic bursts into its leg joints. Warriors tethered its limbs with rope laced with charged ore. Oryx reached its back, opened a panel with the shard's heat, slid inside. The Titan's core was a star trapped in glass. It hummed louder than thought. But Oryx didn't try to destroy it. He spoke to it. He placed the shard against its interface. He let it think, and the Titan stopped moving. Varex screamed. From orbit, impossible. But it wasn't, because the fire had learned to think. The stars remember Earth smoke cold from the wreckage of the Pulse Titan as dawn crept across the scarred valley. Its once glowing limbs now lay still, strewn like the fallen bones of a giant. The mountain trembled no more. The air was thick, with silence, not fear, not grief, but awe. For the first time in memory, the humans had not merely survived an invasion. They had ended one. Oryx emerged from the Titan's carcass slowly. His armor was cracked, his arms trembled, blood mixed with oil on his skin, yet his eyes burned with something ancient and rising clarity. Around him, his people gathered, their weapons lowered, their faces pale with disbelief. He raised his voice over the wind. "It can be done. No need to say more." The truth stood behind him, a monument. The fire they once feared had been captured, directed, and made their own. Lenya stepped forward, blood seeping from a gash across her cheek. "We've done more than fight. We've changed." She was right. They were no longer merely hunters or gatherers, no longer defined by stone and fire. Something deeper had shifted. A spark had become a blaze. Across the caves and hills, tribes had unified, not out of fear but purpose. The Shalak had come to burn them from the world. Instead, they'd lit the forge that made them into something new. Above Earth, High Commander Varek seethed. The loss of the Pulse Titan was not just a tactical failure, it was humiliation. The humans had taken one of their deadliest machines and turned it into a message. Across the cruiser's bridge, officers stood still, afraid to speak. "Do you see now?" Varek growled, voice shaking. "They do not need thousands of years. They don't evolve. They leap." One of his science officers, a pale and slender figure with four-lensed eyes, hesitated. "Commander, the data from the final drone shows something even more troubling." "What is it?" "They are transmitting." Varek froze. "What?" The officer gestured to a floating screen, where waves of pulsing light danced in rhythmic intervals. "We believe they've created a signal language, crude, but consistent, based on captured Shalak tech and native intuition. And it's not just bouncing off atmosphere." "Then where is it going?" The officer paused. "Outward, into deep space." There was a silence so deep it seemed to stretch across the void itself. Varek's claws scraped the metal rail. "They are not only learning, they are calling." He spun to the command crew. "Prepare the orbital lance." And this now. But deep within the forge, Auric already felt it. The shard in his gauntlet pulsed with a low hum, like thunder building. Beneath the earth, the eye, now wired into the roots of the cave itself, showed him glimpses of patterns across the sky. Not just light, but intent. Something in the stars had stirred. Something had heard them. He turned to the gathering warriors, engineers, scouts, and leaders of the united clans. "They will strike again," he said. "But this time, they are not to test us, they fear us." "And they should," Tor said. From the shadows, carrying an armload of crystal grenades. "We're not what we were," Auric nodded. "We're what we were meant to become." Then the sky split. The orbital lance fired in silence a beam of compressed plasma energy, so hot it could burn through planets. It descended faster than thought. A spear of unmaking hurtling toward Vorf Mountain. But the mountain was no longer just rock. It was alive. The moment the lance entered the upper atmosphere, a surge of light erupted from the eye. Auric, eyes wide, reached toward the central crystal spire embedded in the forge's roof. He didn't shout, he connected. The shard on his gauntlet glowed white-hot, and the forge answered. From hidden ridges around the mountain, towers unfolded, primitive in design, yet powered by a synthesis of Shalak tech and earthborn will. They formed a lattice, channeling all energy into a singular point. The beam struck, but did not burn. It splintered. The energy fractured midair, redirected into a spiral of controlled pulses. The force of it knocked half the valley trees flat, but the mountain stood. Above, the Shalak cruiser's command deck went dark. The entire ship shuddered. Vi Rex fell against the console, eyes wide. They redirected the lance. The science officer staggered forward. "Commander, they just bent a weapon designed to destroy cities." Varex turned slowly, realization dawning like doom. "We are not facing primitives." He looked out the viewport at the world below. "We're facing a species that just became a threat." In the forge, Auric stood still, eyes fixed to the sky. He knew what he had done wasn't just survival. It was announcement. They had answered force with defiance. Now it was time to answer fear with understanding. That night, Auric returned to the Eye and began building something entirely new. Not a weapon, not a trap, a message. He knew not what waited in the stars, but he also knew this. If the Shalak feared humans now, others would come. Some to conquer, some to observe, and maybe, just maybe some to learn. He pressed his palm to the Eye and let the shard guide him. The signal stretched outward, past the moon, beyond the reach of satellites, and into the dark ocean between stars. It carried no threat, no demand. Only a truth. We are here. We were not ready, but now we are. Becoming, and we remember. The day Earth spoke back, the mountain was silent again, but this silence held no fear. It was the quiet of momentum building, the deep breath before a new dawn. Far below its slopes, The forests had begun to regrow. The scorched scars from the first invasion were now marked with strange new symbols etched into stone, wood, and even tree bark codes, warnings, lessons. The people had not only survived the stars, they had learned to speak to them. Oryx stood before the eye, his hand hovering over its crystal core. Around him, the forge pulsed with energy. Copper coils hummed, crystals vibrated in rhythm. The shard in his gauntlet connected with the eyes, signals, not in noise or chaos but song. Not music made by voice or drum, but the song of thought, of language born from instinct and hunger and endless human curiosity. The message was ready. It had taken weeks of silent work drawing diagrams, with charcoal, melting alien alloys with earth minerals, wiring circuits with nothing but gut and gamble. But the beacon had been formed, not just a flare of light, a memory encoded in light, shaped by fire, forged with blood and vision. The signal was shaped from everything the humans had endured. The first attack, the shard, the purifier's destruction, the burning of the valley, the siege of the Pulse Titan, and the repelled orbital lance. But it wasn't just a story of survival. It was a challenge to any who heard it. Come again, if you dare. But come ready to learn. Above Earth, the damaged Shalak cruiser limped through orbit. Inside, High Commander Varek sat in silence, his once pristine armor scorched and cracked. The cruiser's AI had lost connection to the orbital weapons. The Pulse Titan was offline. The last transmission from their forward units showed humans wielding weapons built from alien cores, their bodies covered in radiant armor. Firelight had danced in their eyes. A single alert blinked on the ship's console. Unknown signal intercepted. Source, Earth, decoding. Varek stared, mandibles twitching. The message opened not in Shalak syntax, but something more ancient. A visual display unfolded. Oryx standing atop the mountain, holding the eye aloft, flames behind him, warriors at his side. The screen shimmered with translated words. You came to study, then to destroy. We came from soil, from struggle. You, Soulstone. We became storm. Now we know what we are, and what waits beyond you. The signal ended not with a threat, but an invitation. A pulse of coordinates broadcast, not just to the Shalak, but everywhere. The stars were listening. Elsewhere, across the void, in deep space stations and drifting scout vessels, signals blinked to life. Species unknown to Earth raised their antennae, their frills, their sonic receptors. The signal was primitive, but powerful. And deeply human. Some would interpret it as a warning, others as a declaration, a few as hope. Back on Earth, life went on, but never the same. The clans no longer lived only for the hunt or the seasons. They lived with purpose, with the knowledge that they had touched something ancient. New fires burned in the forge, and new children were being raised not just as warriors or gatherers, but as builders. Lenya stood beside Oryx as they watched the valley below from a high ledge. The stars will come again, she said. I know. Will we be ready? Oryx's eyes narrowed. We are ready. Behind them, a new structure rose above the cave mouth, a tall spire carved with crystal veins, its core glowing with stored energy. It wasn't a temple, nor a weapon. It was a listening tower. At its peak sat a rotating dish, crude, but functional, built from salvaged Shalak tech, animal bones, unreal crystal. It turned toward the heavens like a sunflower drawn to light. For now, it simply listened, but soon, it would speak again. The humans had no map of the stars, but they had direction, and they had time. As the fire crackled behind them and the cold winds rolled down from the peaks, Oryx placed a hand over his chest where the shard pulsed gently, now fused to him not as a tool, but as part of his being, a reminder of who they were, of what they had become, and of what they would one day be. Above them, the stars shimmered, not distant, not unreachable,